Another building that's part of the NYU campus is the building which is now called the Brown Building, and that building has a lot of historical significance that I learned about when I was watching the New York City history documentary that I watched in preparation for this trip. They did a little segment on this building, and back in the early 1900s. And even earlier, New York City was a really big manufacturing hub. You don't really associate New York today with manufacturing things, producing things. But back in the day when a lot of things that were produced by human labor, before machines and robots were really involved in the process, and before those sorts of jobs started being outsourced over to Asia, New York had a lot of people that worked in factories doing sort of manual labor, such as making clothing. So there was a company called the Triangle Shirtwaist Company, and they had a factory which was actually inside of that building. It occupied the top 2 floors, I believe, or top 3 floors maybe, of that building, the Brown Building. And in that era, working conditions for people that did those sort of manual tasks was really harsh. Like particularly there, it was a lot of sewing, using sewing machines, and so they had a lot of newly immigrated women that would work in those sorts of factories, and they had very, very few breaks. They got paid very little, and since the work environment was so harsh, they actually locked the door after the workers had come to work. They'd lock the door so that they couldn't leave during the day, and they let them out when it was time to go home. But they didn't want them to be leaving. I guess they didn't. It was hard to keep track of. They had probably 200 or 300 workers that were working on those 2 floors, and I guess it's difficult to keep track of them. So they locked them inside to ensure that all of them that were there were getting paid for a full days of work. But anyways, they had a real tragedy that happened there in 1911. Somehow in those 2 floors, a fire started inside of the building, and the people weren't able to get out. Many of the people were trapped inside the building because all the doors were locked and they were stuck inside. And so they went towards the windows, and some of them, the fire, as soon as the flames got really closer, they were jumping out of the windows, and just a horrible tragedy that happened. There was 146 workers, mostly female, that died in that fire. And this was like highly publicized, like in the media and stuff. Like people that were walking by, they saw the fire, and they saw the people that were up there and they couldn't get down, and they were half on fire, and they were jumping out of the windows, and it was just a horrible sight to see. And but from that experience, it really that was really one of the starting points for getting workplace labor laws in place. The things that are in place in your workplace that protect you from things like this. So that fire was a real landmark for making improvements in the areas of labor laws. So the next place I went to is a restaurant called the Corner Bistro, and I first heard the name of the Corner Bistro, and I first heard about it from the television program How I Met Your Mother. It was mentioned in the episode called The Greatest Burger in New York City, and in that episode, one of the characters is searching for a burger restaurant that he had gone to years ago that he could never find again. And he said that restaurant had the greatest burger in the world. And in this episode, they searched again for that restaurant, trying to find it. And the actual restaurant from the show doesn't actually exist. It was just made up. But during the episode, the Corner Bistro was mentioned as being the top-rated burger restaurant in New York City by a particular guide that they were looking into. And although that wasn't the restaurant, I thought it'd be interesting to see what the greatest burger in New York, according to that guide, tasted like. So that's where I went, and it's a really actually interesting restaurant, very old inside. It was like kind of like a bar. I sat down at the bar, and big racks of liquor bottles were all lined up against the mirror, and the bar was like made out of wood, but it wasn't like stained or anything. It was rough, and that bar looked like it must have been at least 50 years old, probably a lot older, and like it's all slanting and stuff, and all the wood's like warped and stuff, and even the floor was a little bit crooked. Like it must be a really old restaurant. I don't know how long the Corner Bistro has occupied that space, but that restaurant definitely, that spot has definitely had a lot of history in the industry, and so it was pretty cool going in there. The food was not overpriced or anything, and so I ordered a burger. And I got asked the question that I hadn't been asked in quite a long time, which was how I like my burger done. And I've always been told that you want a hamburger so it's not red in the middle, and any ground beef should not be red. And so that's what I said. I said I wanted it well, and the guy that was sitting next to me in the bar said, "Oh, you can't do that. Oh, you got to get it at least medium." And I said, "No, I don't want that. I don't want to get sick." And anyways, I got my burger, and it was cooked well on the outside, but there was still a little bit of pink color in the middle, which it wasn't. Well, I was fine with the idea, but it wasn't what I asked for. But the burger was still pretty good. I wouldn't say it was the best burger I've ever tasted in my life, though. But it was still a good meal, and I'm glad I went there. So the next place that I went to see was somewhere that I already been before. I went back to the Hello Deli, which is the Little Deli, which is right in the same building as the Ed Sullivan Theatre, David Letterman show, and I wanted to go back there to buy a souvenir from being on the Letterman Show. So he sells souvenirs for the Late Show. So I bought a T-shirt that says the Late Show with David Letterman. And I bought it from him, and I wanted to make sure I got up there relatively early, because the one day I'd gone past and it was like 4:30 and he was already closed, and he's the sole proprietor of the deli there. So when he goes home, the restaurant closes, and so it closes relatively early. So I went in there and I bought the shirt, and it was around 4 o'clock or so. And on Wednesday, it was a Wednesday, and they taped the Letterman Show on Wednesdays at around 4:30 p.m. and so there was already big crowds of people around the side of the theater where I had seen the Jonas Brother a few days earlier. So I wanted to see who was going to go in. I already knew who was on the show, so I knew at least one person that was on the show, so I figured I'd stand around and see if I saw him. So the guest that I saw was Ashton Kutcher, and although I could barely recognize him, he had his hair was quite long, and he had a big beard covering his face. But he didn't really come very close to me, but I did get to see him, and that was cool. And the other guest that they had on the show was Rafael Nadal, who is the winner of the U.S. Open. So he wanted him on the show, I guess, and I haven't seen that show yet, so I guess he was on the show. I don't know whether he just did a top 10 list or he was actually interviewed. And the other guest that was on there, who I didn't actually see at this moment here, he hadn't arrived yet. I actually went back to the theater about an hour later when the show was ending, and I saw this guy come out. He was the drummer that was playing tonight, because this week is drum week on the Late Show. So every night they have a different drummer that comes on and plays a drum solo. So the drummer that they had on Wednesday night was a man by the name of Stewart Copeland, and he was the drummer from the Police, the band. So I got to see him, and that was cool as well. So after I'd finished up Rupert G's, and I had my T-shirt, and I had seen Ashton, and I had seen Nadal, I decided I would go back to the Brill building.